So, good morning, everyone. My name is Kristiina Mannermaa. I work as a university researcher at the University of Helsinki in archaeology. And I also work as a visiting professor at the University of Tartu. And today I will talk about my ERC Consolidator grant-funded project, which just started in early April this year. And here is the outline of my presentation. First, I will tell some general things about what is the idea of this Animals Make Identities, or AMI project. Then I will take up some potential possibilities for collaboration with Estonian colleagues and materials. And then if I have time, I will show a case study of the very nice new results from Zoom's analysis of bone artifacts from burials. So this is a research project studying cemeteries, late Mesolithic, early Neolithic cemeteries in Northeast Europe. My aim is to study 8 burial sites, and they have more than 300 burial features. And here is the list of the sites that I have planned to study. They are old, so to say, old sites in the sense that they have been excavated quite a long time ago, many of them, and I don't aim to do excavations during that project. But I chose these burial sites because they are important sites in Northern Europe, and they have been quite well investigated. So we know quite a lot of these sites, even though very much information is still lacking. But this is an advantage, because then I don't have to do all kinds of materials myself in this project, but I can rely on literature and other projects results. The main research question. So I want to study how hunter-gatherers created their social identities together with other species and the environment. So we study links between humans and animals or non-humans based on burial materials. The objectives are here. I have divided the aims to 4 work packages. The first is to understand what made animals and body parts important in burial contexts, to understand how choices of raw material, technology, and types of artifacts reflect social identities. And we want to know what artifacts are found in graves and how they were used and potentially reused, and who used them. The third objective is to reconstruct the life histories not only of humans, but also the animals and artifacts that are found in the human burials. And last, we will reconstruct the social identities of these particular humans that were buried in the cemeteries. The methodological solution is that first all existing material will be gathered from literature and put in the database. The new data will be produced, gathered with archaeological, technological, and molecular methods in this project. And as you see, I have put some of the main methods here and they are not especially new or exceptional methodology, and we are not going to like invent or test any new particular method. But what is like novel here is that we combine the data of various different materials, and we try to do as much new analysis that are needed. So interpretations will be based on all this data, and also anthropological and ethnographical data, and the theoretical backgrounds. And then we use spatial analysis and GIS to work further the data and the results. And because we have a high amount of graves, it gives us good possibility to find pattern similarities and differences between inside the burial site, between the graves, and then between the burial sites. My team will consist of 2 postdoctoral researchers and 2 PhD candidates. Tuija Kirkinen will work with microarchaeology, so she will be employed for 4 years to look at soil samples from these burial sites, and maybe also other contexts, in order to analyze hairs, feathers, and other fibers. And then in that way we can get more information about what animals were used in burial practices, and if there were feathers and furs, so what kind of uses for these animals there were. And this is maybe the part that is like as a methodology a new something that has not been done before here, at least, or with these burial sites. So the other postdoctoral researcher will work with bone artifacts. He or she will do the traceology and technological analysis. The first PhD candidate will study sequence stable isotopes based on the tooth root, mainly from Yuzhny-Oleni Ostrov. So he or she will study the very detailed dietary backgrounds of these persons. And the other PhD candidate will do the osteological, paleopathological, and archaeothanatological study to the Yuzhny-Oleni Ostrov material. And then Johanna Roiha will work as research assistant, and she is a specialist for spatial analysis and GIS, and she will be responsible for that. The outcomes of the project are listed here. I have chosen 4 main outcomes. After we have studied these graves, we understand much better the Mesolithic mind and what it meant to share the world with animals. And in the end of the project, we know more about what the burial finds really are, well, based on the individual life histories of animals and artifacts. We know how furs, feathers, and other fibers were used in burial practices, and we can potentially also point out the wrapping materials in some of the graves. We will know more details about the legacy of animals in the early northern identities. And last but not least, we will understand better why these particular individuals were buried in cemeteries. And this last is like based on this very well-known fact or idea that only part of the population were indeed buried in cemeteries, and there are many other ways for burying the dead. But we don't really know what was behind these practices and why some people were buried like this, for example. So then I will go to the Estonian collaboration. As you remember, I had some Estonian materials in my wish list, and I have Mari Törv and Aivar Kriiska in my project as collaborators and partners. And the idea is for me now, when I have started the project, to evaluate what is going on in Estonian with Estonian materials, what kind of research is already which have done, or what kind of plans there are, and also gather the literature, the published articles, and so on, and then look at the materials physically, that what kind of things we could do together, and what kind of methods we could apply for Estonian materials, because I have money for doing several kinds of things that are included in my plan. And here are 4 ideas that could be possible. These all are studying animal artifacts or animal bones. But of course, we could also do something with humans, unless there are also already people working with all these very precious materials in Estonia. So we can continue talking about this, and also other members or other people are welcome to collaborate with AMI, which is the short name of my project. And I forgot to say that there will be calls for these posts that has not been filled yet. So I need one anthropologist or physical anthropologist or human osteologist. I need one trachologist specialized in useware and technological analysis. And then I need one person who will concentrate on sequenced isotopes analysis. So I think that this radiocarbon dating of animal tooth pendants, in order to investigate the ages of animal, the artifacts, how they vary inside graves, for example, whether the very worn pendant will give older results than not at all worn pendant, and so on. And also it's possible to date animal bone artifacts or animal bones in order to understand whether they really belong to the burial or not. Then trachologiccal analysis of faunal artifacts could be done, and also this zoological, we could apply zooms to some materials from Estonia. I will later in my speech I will talk about these zooms if I have time. And then also, of course, if there are soil samples from interesting contexts, we could ask Tuija to look at them and get some more understanding about what there are in these soil samples. I can be a little bit flexible, so I'm interested in hunter-gatherers, Stone Age hunter-gatherers in general, even though I have put a certain limit for the time, or chronological limit for my project. This is mainly because maybe the central site or material comes from Yuzhny Oleni Ostrov in Russia, because it has been least studied of all these cemeteries, and it is late Mesolithic. Well, little bit more than 8,000 years old. And there are very, very interesting, like detailed questions concerning this Južni site, which is quite different from, for example, Seinäjoki, and also from Lithuanian sites and Skateholm. So I'm not like presenting that these all are similar cemeteries, or they have similar kinds of backgrounds, even though they all are studied as from the same, with using same research questions and so on. So, do I have time? What is it?
Yes,
When did I
yes,
start?
you have time. 5
Okay.
minutes and then questions.
Maybe 5 minutes more. So I think that this might be interesting for you who were not listening to my presentation when, well, I think it was in February when I visited Tartu last time. I talked about nice new results of Zoom analysis of some strange artifacts from Južni Ostrov, and I have got more results from York, where these analyses have been made. So I will quickly tell you what we have found and what was the idea or the purpose of this study. So the purpose of the study was obviously to identify the raw material of bone artifacts, which are so truly worked that there are no morphological features that could be used for identification of raw material. Here I have put some fine artifacts. I was not able to take samples from these artifacts, at least not yet, but I have taken samples from similar, at least from different kinds of points and harpoons and spearheads and arrowheads. First, maybe it's necessary to have a quick look on the analysis method. As I said, this is a special identification method which is done in some universities. This my study was done in collaboration with York University, and it is based on peptide mass fingerprinting. So the bones are identified by differences by looking at the differences in the mass of the peptides, which is the collagen, basically. And each species have different fingerprinting. There are some species which are very much alike and they cannot be separated. For example, bovids cannot be separated. The wild and the domesticated bovids cannot be separated from each other. And I think also elk and red deer cannot be distinguished from each other. So in total, I have, well, so far I have sent 127 samples, or samples from 127 different bone artifacts to York, and I have their results now. And we can send more, 130 samples more to York from various different sites in the future. The first results from these 127 samples are very nice. When the morphologically identified animals in Južni Ostrov burials are like elk, bear, beaver mainly, and there are a couple of reindeer bones, and there are a couple of dog and wolf bones, and then there are some birds. We found several more species among these finds by analyzing them with zooms. So there were definitely either bison or aurochs, and they were also using wildcat or lynx. They cannot be separated from each other. And then interestingly, quite surprisingly, many of the artifacts were made of human bone. And here you can see inside the yellow box these questions that we had when we are doing these zooms in this project. And here you can see a particular type of artifacts that have been found in Yuzhny-Oleniostrov graves, in several graves. In my left side, I don't know if I can point it here, you can see drawings from Nina Gurina's book, monograph from 1956, where she's figuring the bone pendants. So they are more or less identical to tooth pendants, animal tooth pendants found in the graves. They have these grooves, never holes. They are not perforated, but they have these grooves, either a complete groove surrounding the narrow side, or they have several individual grooves, or one individual groove. And here are examples of animal tooth pendants. These are elk teeth, made of elk teeth. These are bear teeth, bear canines. These are incisors. These are beaver incisors with grooves. And these are wild boar incisors. There were two graves out of 177 graves in Yuzhny-Oleniostrov where there are wild boar. So it's definitely not a common species there. And here are some some photos of these artifacts. This one is that one. This one is that one, and so on. And if we look at the results from zooms, all these items which are pointed with arrows are made of human bone. And these artifacts which are pointed with arrows here are from two graves, from grave 113 and grave 69. So quite a many. And I also got results from rest of the items, but I didn't put them here. They were made of, for example, wildcat or lynx. Some of them are made of aurochs or bison, and some of them are made of elk bone. So not all are made of all this kind of typical pendant types are made of both animal bones and human bone. Here is a picture of one pendant from grave 69, and this is a bear tooth. And my theory here is that these pendants that are made of bone are imitations of these animal tooth pendants. They are not, as you remember maybe from this picture, they are not exactly similar, but they have similar kinds of shapes. So they have a similar appearance, but they were made like of very irregular bone pieces without proper working or finishing. And I also found, when I looked through these materials, they are not pictured here, but I found that there are pendants that are made of harpoons or other barbed points. So they definitely have remains of these barbs. They are clearly visible, but they have also this kind of shape. They are short and they have grooves. So they were recycled from weapons to pendants, or at least my interpretation is that these are pendants. But it is interesting that there are these like mixing of materials, that whatever bone can be used to make these pendants. So they didn't make difference between human and animal bone in that sense. Here is a pendant from grave 69, and here is a picture of elk tooth. So maybe you can see that there are some similar shapes, and impression is very typical. So if I summarize so far what we can say about this tooth or bone pendants made of human bone, 16 out of 127 analyzed artifacts from Yuzhny and Ostrov were made of human bone. And we made double samples of three artifacts, because we wanted to be sure that this is there is no like mistakes or so, or contaminations. And 5 out of 177 graves in Yuzhny and Ostrov has human bone pendants, or at least we have analyzed. Highest number of human bone pendants, 11, was found in grave 113. It is a grave of an adult man. And we can say that human bone was used as raw material in the same way as animal bone, and human bone pendants may have imitated tooth pendants. This study is in progress. I am writing a paper at the moment of this, and we want to make a little bit more studies on these artifacts themselves. So when I looked at the material, I didn't have any idea that they were made of human bone. So they cannot be identified morphologically. They are just random pieces of bone. So there were no like meaning for them to highlight that this is human bone. And that's why I think that it is important that they didn't make any difference between human bone and animal bone. Otherwise, they would have like left something visible about that it's typical human bone or teeth or so on. So there's a lot of things that can be discussed of what this tells about human-animal relationship and what it tells about attitudes to dead people and their remains and so on. So thanks for your attention, and maybe there are some questions.
Thank you.